very much for coming. This has been great.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Well, you know, I've been so excited about having this because Hans' office is right next to mine.
Oh, well, then I'll bump into you again sometime when I go see
Yeah,
Hans.
that's right. And so
Sounds good, if you don't mind. And I don't interrupt anything very important, I might do that.
Well, please do. Come into my office. You'll see all kinds of crazy stuff.
Okay.
So when were you born?
In 1939,
And where?
in a very, very small place. It actually is more of a summer pasture, you know, where my father was then there. And my father came from a very small mountain farm too. Mm-hmm. And this is in the Südtirol, that is the South Tyrol, which now belongs, of course, to Italy since 1941, you know. That is the very, very northern part of Italy, across the very famous pass in Europe.
Right.
It's called the Brenner Pass.
Yep.
And that is the direct, really, connection between north and south in Central Europe. You know, because it really doesn't go up over a pass like many do. It goes just up the valley, higher, and then down. It's sort of continuous in the valley. It goes up and down, yeah, but not over the pass, over.
Well, when you study European history, you learn about the Brenner Pass.
Probably do, because it's been over the history, you know, very, very important place. Second World War, very important transport, you know, all that, yeah, of course.
So tell me a little bit about your mom and dad.
My mom and my dad. Well, my mom actually worked from very young in the restaurant industry in a place, a very, very well-known town called Meran, in Italian, Merano. Mm-hmm. And that is in the South Tyrol, okay, near Bolzano, near Bozen in German. See, there everything is bilingual.
Yeah.
But the people, I think, are still now, you know, you cannot get rid of the old roots, you know, and traditions and things. And so much of it is still South Tyrolean, you know, even though they have tried, the Italians, for a while, you know, during Mussolini times, they have tried very hard to just get it away from Austria, you know. It used to belong to Austria at one time. Yeah. So that's where I'm from. I was born there, yeah, way up the valley. It's called the Passayer Valley. Mm-hmm. There is one other very, very famous, maybe the most famous Tyrolean that ever lived. Okay? His name was Andreas Hofer. You could probably Google him and read about him. Andreas Hofer, H-O-F-E-R, Andreas, from St. Leonhard in the Passayer Valley. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very interesting.
If I Googled him, what would I learn about him?
You might learn some of its history. You might learn the fights they had against the French near Innsbruck on a place called Berg Isel. There were like 3 or 4 fights, you know, in that area. And so...
I'm looking here at this picture.
That's where I was born.
My God.
It didn't look like that then. You know, this is newer.
Okay, let's see, let's put this in for the camera, for the family.
Are you there with me, Hansi? Who is there with me?
Bernie.
You and Bernie are there with me, yeah? Know where they come from.
Yeah, we do.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's a great fab.
The place is called Gasthaus Latzins, A-L-Z-I-N-S. Latzins Gasthaus in the Passayer Valley.
So here you were born and grew up, and what did your dad do for a living?
My dad worked mainly, he worked for some farmers, you know, for a while, and then he started to work for the county, the Tyrol, which is like a Bundesland, we call it in Austria. Mm-hmm. There are 9 Bundesländer for Austria, and Tyrol is one of them, you know. And he worked where they would do avalanche securities up in the mountains, you know, so that they don't break loose, you know, makes avalanche stops up there. And then they worked on the rivers, a lot of stonework, you know, along the river so they wouldn't rip everything out and take bridges out and, you know, because sometimes back home in these valleys, you got a lot of side streams plus the glacier in the back, you know,
Right.
that damn thing can come up pretty high. And in the town we live in is called Neustift, in Stubai Valley, Stubaital. Neustift im Stubaital. That's where we live now. And the Burgis family, way, way, way back, for generations and generations, her family lived there, very famous family in that valley. Uh-huh. Yeah, so that's where we're from. And they used to have some pretty damaging floods there from that little river. Mm-hmm.
Was being a kind of a stonemason and working in contracting, was he involved in the government at all? Was he a...
No.
No?
No.
What kind of government was there?
It was a republic.
Republic, yeah.
Yeah, Österreichische Republik.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's called today Republik Österreich.
Okay.
You know, yeah. So,
Good.
alrighty.
So when you we'll talk a little bit about schooling there. It's a pretty...
Schooling, yeah, okay. Well, where I went to school, it's just a sort of little outpost from the real village. What do we got there? Oh, God. In God's name, how about that? Where did this come from? Did I make it sometime? I must have, huh? Yeah? Interesting. Yeah. Well, the schoolhouse.
Well, we're going to do this really educationally. Watch this. You can point that out. I'm going to have Ed, go ahead. You can just point it out to me.
Oh, well, the schoolhouse be right up here.
Okay.
Yeah. And we used to live up there. There's like 3 houses. We had an apartment there. Those were for the Zöllner, was einen Zöllner, you know, on the border.
Border security?
Border security guys, you know, that was built for them, and they were apartments. And we, one day, or 1 year, I should say, later on, when I was already going to school here, then we got an apartment there.
Huh.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and so actually grew up right here in this big town. Yeah.
Oh, when you say, how many people would be there? There are a couple hundred people?
If they're all, maybe not that many.
Yeah.
100 and a little maybe. Yeah, you know, there's very many houses there, and maybe each house, 5 people, 6, I don't know. So, not many people in a small little church. And I remember that especially well because I was an altar boy.
Ah,
Oh yeah, a nice little small church. You ever been in it?
Yeah.
You have? Right. It's nice, huh?
Yes.
I was an altar boy. And then there's...
it's okay, you're a Catholic?
Oh yeah.
Catholic, yeah.
Austria is all Catholic,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness, I even remember a time growing up when there was a time where they were sort of, the Protestants were, ooh, you know, don't get too close to them.
Don't get too close, that's right, yeah.
Type of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But anyhow, yeah, that is where I grew up. But there was a one-room school for all 8 grades.
Ah,
You know, the grade school. All 8 first grades were there in that one room with one teacher. Yeah, and he was, I must say today even, I think the best teacher I ever had.
yeah.
I had a few professors, you know, afterwards that taught me Latin and Greek, of which I don't know anything anymore. But I remember some of the things the latter
Yeah.
taught me. Uh-huh. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I remember one day he gave me a whoop right over the head, you know. And I said, whoop. And the reason he gave me a little batch, we call it, right, was because I knew the answer and I didn't raise my hand.
Ah,
So he was upset that I didn't, you know. Who can tell me? Who can tell me ein unbestimmtes Zahlwort? Can you translate that?
Unbestimmtes Uncertain?
like an uncertain number.
Yeah, like a prime number.
And I said, einige, some. You don't know how many, some or einige. And watch.
Still remembers it, I love it.
yeah. It was, I think, the only one I ever got.
Yeah.
Deserved probably more of them, but yeah. That's how it goes.
Well, I understand you were really one of the best students in the class, is that right?
Well, they said.
Yeah.
I don't know. I did pretty good. But thinking back, today, I had, they were, of course, all friends, they're all local, But we had one family that walked the children, okay? It's from Krösbach, the name of the little place is called Krösbach. And the last little town in the valley is called Ranald. And that is, about 7 kilometers, 5 miles, I'd say, close to or so, back the valley, the last little. And they all went along, little kids like that, And one of them I remember as clear as could be. Ronald Peter was his name. Peter, yeah. And because he was from Ranald, that was the name of the little town in there. Ronald Peter. Yeah, I still remember him so clearly.
Come to school.
Huh?
They had to come
They had
to
to
school.
walk.
And they had to walk to school, summer and winter, anytime, Yeah.
So what age did you start school? Was that 6 years old?
First grade, yeah.
First grade. And how many years would you be in school?
8,
8 years?
yeah. Unless he went on.
Yeah. Did you go on, or
I went on, yeah.
where did you go from there?
From there, I went, that's because they thought I was too smart for just staying there, I guess. So I hear today, but I didn't think so. Anyhow, I went to a place that's called ein bischöfliches Gymnasium. That is like a bishop school from the Diocese of Innsbruck.
Ah,
And it was in the town of Schwaz, Schwaz, Schwaz. Very, very good school, a very nice town. That was, I think, mainly known for silver mining at one time.
okay.
Yeah, the town Schwaz. Very nice. It was a good school.
Were you taught by the nuns?
No, we had no nuns then.
No nuns?
They were all boys. Now it is both.
Okay.
I find out, yeah, but back then it was only boys. Get up at 6 in the morning, right? Quick, wash up, go to church. Was in the building, It was a diocesan place, and go to church, and yeah. Then I was in the choir also in that church, in that school, and in the church choir we had, of course, choir for the church,
Maybe
That was
tell them about your typical school day when you were there.
Well, then
6 in the morning.
it started early in the morning, and then we went to church, and then from church we went to breakfast, and then we had a morning study hour, and then we went to classes, all day till noon. Then noon we had lunch. Then in the afternoon, sometimes or most of the time, we had like a couple hours off. And then around 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock we went back to study to the evening dinner. And then bedtime. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I got to go there when we're home. I want to go there for a visit,
Now, on weekends, did you go back home, or did you stay there?
No, stayed there. All the time.
And this was near Innsbruck?
Just a little bit south of Innsbruck or east of Innsbruck.
Okay.
Down the Inn Valley a little bit, maybe 30 kilometers down, not far, below Innsbruck.
And how long did you stay there?
4 years.
4 years?
And then I didn't want to anymore. And I remember I had an aunt in the city of Linz, okay, that were quite educated, they were teachers and, business people and so, okay. And they were just saying, no, you got to stay, you got to stay, you got to stay. And that was probably the worst mistake I made in my life. Should have stayed, but I didn't. And so I then went to become a mechanic. I was sort of always interested in what you call it, mechanical things, you know.
Right.
Even today I do things that, right, Hans?
Yeah.
You know, crazy little things, you know, that feel like they need an engineer.
Tell them why you left, when you heard the conversation from mom and dad.
Well, oh, yeah. Yeah, the school was really quite expensive for people like our family, you know. And then when I heard, you know, back home, you know, they could hardly eat, and I went to this fancy school, so I said, no, I'm not going anymore. So I actually quit because of that also. And then I went to mechanic school, and I became a diesel mechanic. The place that it's like an 4-year apprentice program, right?
Right.
And you learn everything about the trucks and the buses and the diesels, you know, diesel engines, of
Yep.
course. Yeah, and then I did that there for 4 years, and then after that, it pretty much started out, I think, with my skiing, pretty soon after that.
Did you ski as a child? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
is that just a normal hobby? To
Oh,
do?
yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
Tell
And-
them the story
and-
about the Christmas morning with the skis.
Oh, one Christmas, yeah, we got bear skis. Nice painted, one red bear and one blue bear, you know. Nice painted little skis, bear for my brother and one for me, you know. And of course the thing was, you know, to test how flexible they were, you know. And my brother go, you know, and he broke a tip off one of his skis. Then he said, those are mine. No, I said. And then my father, he fixed the tip up, you know. He used one of these, we called them Konservenkannen from the military.
Soup can, or a
You know,
rations can.
Yeah, yeah, and he nailed it around with little nails
Wow.
and put a little glue on it and put it back together, and he hobbled around on that ski. But then my first ski lift, okay, we lived in the middle of the valley there on an old little farmhouse that's not standing there anymore because they needed to widen the road, and the house took in too much of the road for trucks to go through, so they needed to tear it down. And I was so mad and so sad about that, you know. Anyhow, but one day, my brother and my older sister, they already went to school in that place there in Kreuzbach, you know, where I then went, you know. But not then, I was too little then, too early. And so, Padre, wie hat kosten, der Franziskaner, Pater Ludwig. Pater Ludwig was a Franciscan, you know. He came by to teach religion up in the valley, you know. And I was outside on one of these little skis, you know. And then he said if I'd like to come up to my brother and my sister, you know. I said, yeah. And so I gave him the poles, and he pulled me all the way back, you know, to the school. So he was my first T-bar. about 3 kilometers up the valley.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a great story.
Yeah, that's how it was. You know,
Did they have ski resorts? Did they have, or was it just
They-
go up the mountain and come down?
back then we did, yeah. There was hardly anything. Now it's all different, you know.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in the Stubai, people, if anybody hears it, they should really, really plan it to make a trip to the Stubai Glacier. It is the largest, finest skiing glacier in Austria. It's called Stubai, like Dubai, but with S-T, S-T-U-B-A-I. Stubai Glacier. They can Google it.
There'll be coming.
Yeah, maybe I'm up there, I give them a lesson.
Well, yeah, you're the best. Just out of curiosity, when you were working on the diesels, just
Yeah.
back then, was Mercedes, was that the big brand then?
No, not then.
No?
No, they were not, no.
You had
No.
a little hill behind where you lived, where you used to
He's
put up
talking about
things.
diesel mechanics now.
Oh,
Yeah.
Just
No.
curious,
No
what was,
Mercedes,
what was there a name that the kind
There was the Steyr,
Steyr?
yeah. There was a very, very, for all the not big trucks, but smaller trucks, you know, like dump trucks, a lot of dump trucks and so, you know, Steyr diesel, yeah. And then another one from Austria, they don't make it anymore. I know when it's quit, but there was called the Grave and Stift. That was a really, really exceptional two-cycle. Can you imagine?
can't, no.
Yeah, two-cycle. Yeah, V6. Unbelievable. Had big problem because the cylinder heads were sort of aluminum type, you know. They were not good enough.
Yeah.
There was a problem with the cylinder heads. I remember that. I changed a lot of head gaskets.
Well, I tell you, well, there's always looking for good mechanics at Cummins engine, so I can see that's always up the road. But your true love really was skiing, wasn't it?
Well, it ended up being that way, yeah. Ended up that way.
So what was the transition from being a mechanic in mechanic school to all of a sudden kind of working your way to skiing?
Yeah, it just happened. You know, I had a very good friend at a place called Mutters outside of Innsbruck that was also a ski instructor back then, before me actually, you know. And then he told me about a place that he worked. It's called Hintertux. Very famous place in the Tyrol, Hintertux,
Right.
in the Zillertal, which is very famous also. Ziller Valley, Zillertal. Tal means valley. Zillertal, Hintertux in Zillertal, yeah. And I taught there then for about 4 years, yeah. Eventually, I met up with, I don't really exactly remember, do you remember who it was I met up to come to Point?
In 64.
Yeah, who was it, remember?
No, you were 4 years in Hintertux,
Yeah.
and in the summer they employed you as a chauffeur.
No, but he said who connected him with Boyne.
Oh, Ottmar Schneider.
Yeah, but I didn't know him.
Ottmar Schneider knew that there were a bunch of Austrian
Yeah.
graduates in the Austrian Academy, and he was the director.
He was
for
ski
the
school
mountain.
director. Ottmar Schneider is an Austrian gold Olympian in slalom in 1952. He comes from a very famous ski resort called Lech, 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 on the Arlberg region. Yeah, and he was the ski school director up at Boyne Mountain, Michigan, you know.
And he only
And-
employed Austrians.
And he brought over all Austrian certified ski instructors, you know,
Tell him
to
how you
teach.
met Grandpa Jack.
Teach at Boyne Mountain. Well, I then taught skiing also in Austria at a place where people should remember that one if they hear it. It's called Obergurgl. Obergurgl, Hochgurgl in the Ötz Valley. That is the most snow-sure ski resort in Austria.
Snow, sure, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not everywhere you get the snow.
Yeah.
And when you're going skiing in the Alps, you know, you like to go for some good snow, I tell you, for sure, you know. It's called Obergurgl, Hochgurgl in the Ötz Valley, Ötztal. Yeah, And there I was teaching.
You were certified already.
Yeah, I was certified then, Austrian state certified. It is sort of in the ski teaching business, like if you graduated, I guess, from Harvard or something, you know, become a lawyer. If you become a ski instructor and you graduate from the Austrian state ski school, it's a sort of equivalence, maybe.
Well, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal, yeah. And they are, you know, really have, even in America, you know, Austrian skiing and ski technique has built all of the American skiing instruction. Yeah. With
So
a guy
was-
named Hannes Schneider.
Yeah.
He was the big one, came over.
Did you meet somebody there? I understand.
In Austria.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a couple, actually two couple from Akron, Ohio. One couple's name was Helbig, Jack and Pat Helbig, and the other couple's name was a little younger. They were from the Firestone family, you know, the tire people.
Sure.
Yeah, Morgan and Julie Firestone, both of them. And I went to, they then, when they left, they said if I'd like to come and visit them sometime,
And you were
you know.
teaching him for 1 week.
I'd like to, you know. And I said, well, you know, goodness gracious, I was a young guy, you know. America, what? Huh? What? Yeah, you know. So they sent me an airplane ticket and the whole thing. I got a visitor's visa, had to go to Vienna to get the visa. you know, for a visitor's visa, it's crazy. And then I came over, you know. And sometimes if I were anything to comment or say in this little interview to people also is, you probably find more change in your life along the way by the people you meet than, you know, what you learn or things, you know. Very, very, very important. I keep telling that my children, my grandchildren, you know, especially now, you know, they're getting into their life now.
Right.
Yeah, and so I came over and I got on the plane on a Lufthansa flight. And as I
But that was probably your first time on a plane.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Oh,
yeah,
my God.
yeah, in 1964. Yeah, so here I was flying over, and the guy comes, I was sitting in the back there, you know, and the guy comes tapping me on the shoulder, you know, and I look up, and I said, Manfred. I said, he looked at me, he says, where are you going? I said, with you, you know. He says, crazy, you know. Now here there was a guy that worked for Lufthansa, you know, in the cockpit. As I think his main thing was, what you call it, the technical thing, the navigating stuff, you know. Anyhow, that was Manfred, you know. I had a picture sometime. I used to take him skiing up on the glaciers in Hintertux. I used to take him skiing, and here he is, a small world, right?
Yeah, it is a small world.
Yeah, and he says, I'll be back in a little bit, you know. So here I am, he says, come on, and we're right away up to first class, and then from first class, one door further, and one door further from first class is the captain.
Oh.
You know, and I was sitting in there all trip. I still remember talking about Greenland, they showed me, you know, flying over. You know? And then we landed in New York City, and I wasn't allowed off the plane. So, everybody gets off the plane, everybody, you know. And when everybody been off, I, of course, wore my Tyrolean suit, the tie, you know. Traveled nicely, you know. Yeah. So everybody was off the plane. Now comes Hans Auer. All the crew stands on the steps outside. The men all saluting me. Even with my Austrian suit and tie, walking down the thing. And Mr. Helbig and his wife standing up on the balcony watching it.
My golly.
At Kennedy Airport. You know, then when you got off a plane, you didn't run through all the tunnels, you know. People come out, and there were people waving and saying hello when people came and left, you know. So they were up there, you know. And he said later on many times, I thought the Bürgermeister from Innsbruck came.
Well, you're a celebrity, a celebrity.
So it was funny. And then the man then is responsible for us being here in America, because he's the one then that invited us over, and he sponsored us for visa, you know, and work in this country. He owned a construction company in Akron, Ohio.
And what's his name again?
Jack Helbig.
Okay.
Yeah, he was also a military man. Yeah, Air Force man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Tell them how they picked you up and where you went.
Yeah, and they picked me up in New York City, you know, and they had like a motorhome, you know, a little motorhome. And I remember driving down the avenues, you know, with my head up on the dash, you know, looking up at all these buildings, you know. I'm used to mountains, you know, looking up, not skyscrapers. So we were driving along, you know.
Oh, wow.
And then was in '64, and so there was the World's Fair also in New York City. So, you know, they went there. And, of course, where do I go? Where they go, you know? So I went along with them. And then after a while, he said, well, maybe the Austrians have something here too, you know? And sure enough, the Austrians had a pavilion there, you know? And that pavilion that was at the World's Fair, people bought in New York State, very close to where we live. There's a little ski area called Cockaigne.
Yeah, Jack Van Scoter.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
You know Jack?
Yeah.
You kidding?
I skied at Cockaigne.
You did?
Yeah.
Did you ski when I was there?
Probably.
I was there in the 70s.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe you should have met them.
Yeah, I would have been nothing but for you.
See,
Yes,
she
I
was-
can see that, yeah.
Burgi was the ski school director.
Well, I'll be
I
damned.
was sort of in charge of what was going on.
Yeah.
They called me director of skiing. So whatever it had to do with skiing, I was directing, I guess. No, we had a very, very successful time there. Also, many thanks to all the Ohio Cleveland Metro Ski Council people that used to support us all the time. You know, they used to come all the time. And I tried a little bait back, you know, because they were so good. There's a bunch of clubs called the Cleveland Metro Ski Council, you know. And so we did that, yeah. And I then coached them. They asked me if I'd coach them, you know. They have little racing teams. I said, sure, you got to do what I say, you know. So they came up a few times, and I gave them the drills, you know. And then we went out to Sun Valley. There was a national,
Yeah.
you know. Ta-da-da! We won the trophy.
Oh, my golly. Oh, my golly. Hans.
You ever want to see an airplane with a trophy going up and down?
Oh, fantastic.
I don't know whether they ran out of champagne or not. It was one celebration, yeah. Yeah, so it was a great time, and we made many friends, yeah.
Well, talk about friends. How did you meet your wife?
Oh, my goodness gracious. She had a flat tire
Flat tire. Where?
in Neustift in Stubai.
Okay.
See, my wife was a midwife,
Yep.
you know, and she delivered hundreds of babies up in the mountains, you know, not in the hospitals, in the homes, you know. Oh, yeah. She delivered hundreds of them. And one day she was on the road, and I just happened to be by, and she had a flat tire. So I fixed the tire, of course, and sent her on her way. And then, you know, we met from there on, and you know how things go after that.
Well, how did things go after that?
Pretty fantastic. You know, with a girl like that, you can't be very wrong.
Well, I can see why. Even-
Yeah, there you go.
So you met there in Austria.
Yeah,
Did you get married in Austria?
yeah, we did.
And you
Yeah.
came over here, we, taking the plane, that whole story. Did she follow you thereafter, or how'd
She
that
came
work?
after, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was up at Boyne Mountain in
Okay.
Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah. And I worked there, taught skiing there for a number of years. And
And
there I met a guy from Detroit who owned a crane rental company,
Okay.
Curran Crane. His name was John Curran. I don't think he's here anymore, but was a little older, you know. And yeah, but that's where I worked. And there he got me then, because people were complaining that I was doing all this crane stuff and I wasn't a member of the union, you know.
Ah.
So my mid-workers, they, you know, what you got there?
We got everything here.
It's
We
what
got
it
into your
looks like.
ski career. Because I'm looking at one thing that talks about Sears. Sears?
Yeah.
You know, when I was growing up, Sears was known, you know, not only the huge catalog,
Yeah.
but also for sports. The guy
Yeah.
that was most famous was Ted Williams.
Ted Williams.
Yes.
That's right. And Ted Williams had like an advisory group. And in the ski department, the advisor was Ottmar Schneider, the Olympian.
Ah,
Yeah, and I worked for him, and then I got involved with Sears. They asked me-
wait, I'm going to show this while he's talking. There's a
Attention skiers. Crazy. It's crazy. Where do you find all that stuff?
well, this is your life.
Schatzi, you kept it, huh?
And in fact, there's I remember this. This is Tension Skiers, Ski Sears, Eagle Ridge,
Yeah,
Westfield, New York.
right.
And I'm just gonna, I don't know if you can see this ad, but there's,
Isn't that crazy?
yeah.
That's crazy.
And
Yeah,
that was in Westfield, and you can, when you leave Mayville, heading towards Westfield on the right-hand side, is Eagle Ridge.
That's right.
And I remember going there, I think, once.
Yeah,
once.
right on the hill. Uh-huh.
So you skied there, or you taught there?
Yeah, I had the school there. Uh-huh. Yeah, and we had a rental shop and a little ski shop that my wife worked, and I took care of the ski teaching. Hmm. And then we had a bad accident there with the owner,
And who was the owner?
Tony DiMembro. He owned a hotel in Mayville.
So that's,
The Peacock Inn was called in Mayville.
Anthony, was it DiMambro, wasn't it?
DiMembro, yeah.
And his brother, I think, was an attorney named Gene
That's true.
DiMambro.
My goodness gracious,
And-
where you come from? Oh, goodness.
I've been around a little bit. And,
Well, I can say that.
and Gene sold it to a guy, this is really ancient history.
Oh, my God, look
Wally
at that.
Carlson.
That's Boyne Mountain.
Wally Carlson. Did you work for Wally? Was there anything going on there? But I think he wanted to, I don't think he ran it as a school or as a ski resort.
Did you see that? That's Boyne Mountain.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they knew I could
Tell
play a
them what we
little
had to
bit.
do
Huh?
every night. Tell them what we had to do every night,
Well, but on Friday night.
Friday.
Friday night, there was the ski instructor races, you know, and then there was, in the evening was always a little party, you know, and they knew that I could yodel a little bit, so I had no way out. My wife and I, we did a little yodeling.
So that's you? Oh my God.
She cute, huh?
Oh yeah, you stole her.
Yeah, I know
She's
that.
about 10 years younger than you, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's an article here, Cockaigne, next for the Auers, Hans and Bergie Auer, well known to many skiers in the Olean area.
Yeah,
The
I
direct
used to
Cockaigne ski area in Cherry Creek.
Yeah. Yeah, in Olean, I worked at a place called Ski Wing. That's not functioning anymore either. Yeah.
So your wife
was
was
an
going to be, was the ski school and director.
Uh-huh.
You
Yeah.
were promoting the new programs as the head coach for the Cockaigne racing team and the Christmas racing camp, and
Yeah, well.
serving as the NASTAR coordinator. How about that?
Yeah.
And it goes on, for the purposes, this is your biography. A native of Austria, you came to the United States in 1964 as a racing coach and instructor at Boyne Mountain, Michigan,
Uh-huh.
and later served as a ski director at Eagle Ridge,
Yeah.
and also was the director at Ski Wing in Allegheny.
Yeah.
And that's the same town as a place called St. Bonaventure,
That's
which of
right,
course
where
Hans
went
went
to.
to.
Uh-huh.
So it all comes together,
Yeah, it does in a way.
yeah. And you're a graduate of the Austrian Ski Academy and a member of the Professional Ski Instructors of America and the Professional Eastern PSIA, a demonstration team.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were demonstrating, what were you demonstrating?
Demonstrating all the different turns,
Ah,
you know.
Tell them that you also became a member, a chosen member of the demonstration.
Oh, of the ski demo team,
Ski.
yeah, but that's what he just said, yeah.
Skiing techniques.
Yeah.
right?
We demonstrate technique, you know, and different turns. The stem turn, the stem crested, the parallel, the short swing, the, you know, all of that. Up on weight, down on weight, you know, all of it, you know. What puts the thing together.
Tell them about that you became a member of the demonstration team.
I told him, he knows that.
so you really, I mean, you are now, but you were quite a handsome guy.
Shit,
I mean, let's take a
you're
look
funny.
here. And look at it.
Oh, come on, Craig, you're
I
funny.
can't- yeah, no, it's true, look at this.
Well, I had to do my part.
And just we're going to talk to your wife in a few minutes, but
Uh-huh.
this is a terrific picture taken by Richard Hallberg, who was a terrific photographer for the Post-Journal ad. If you can get that,
Oh,
that's the two of them doing precision.
oh,
skiing.
well, that's the two of us,
Yeah.
darling.
The only time my wife and I did that is when we collided.
Collided.
Yeah,
great.
and now you'd have to have been 1 second of that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
good.
I gotta ask though, I mean, no, don't go away. I gotta go back to a little bit of history here, because I'm a history guy.
Okay.
And, you know, you grew up in Austria
Uh-huh.
during a time which was a really early transition. You were born in 1939.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Hitler, Germany,
Yeah.
marches into
Yeah.
Austria and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff.
And then the Americans came and they had a little camp there in Neustift,
Mhm.
you know.
Where you
And
were? Yeah.
In Neustift, yeah,
Okay,
right.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Right outside the village in Stackler. And there, I remember when everything came fall to pieces, when everything was over,
Yep.
all the people, the local people went there, you know, getting mattresses and all the things that were left behind by the army. We had a little army there, you know, American.
So the barracks, when they abandoned
Yeah.
the barracks, you just came in and
Yeah.
took
yeah.
advantage? Yeah, good.
Yeah, they took some stuff out of there. And then there was one set of barracks where my father then got an apartment, and that is where I actually got my start there, so to speak.
Ah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did your,
That was in Milders. You know where?
Yeah,
I-
probably near, Bagland.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just a little ways out.
Nothing wrong.
I'll show it you one day when we're there.
did your mom and dad talk at all about kind of how the politics changed, or were you so far away from it all?
No, there was never any politics in our house.
Or in the community
No,
at all, nothing?
No, not there.
Yeah, yeah,
No, farmers
okay,
and workers.
yeah.
That's all.
Did you ever notice any planes going overhead or anything?
Oh yeah. Because you see, during the Second World War, there was a lot of north-south traffic, you know, planes
Right.
going over. And we live in this valley, you know, you can imagine, right?
Right,
Mountains all the way up, you know, and then the planes, they didn't fly at 30,000 feet, you know. These Praps just barely went over the mountains, you know. And then, you know, these 4 propeller planes, when they come over the valley like that, you could hear the drone. I remember that. How the, I mean, the whole valley just sort of vibrated, you know, when they flew over, a whole bunch of them, you know. You can imagine.
yeah.
Yeah, I can remember that.
Tell him about Jack, why he invited you over here.
Huh?
Tell him why Jack invited you
Oh.
over here, the story.
Jack, she talks about, not Jack, she talks about Jack Helbig
Yes.
from Akron.
Right.
Yeah, And the reason I found out later, really, was that when he was one of the people flying over with the bombers.
Ah,
And he, later I found out, always wanted to do something for somebody from that area. So,
Wow.
so then he was there on a ski holiday, he and his wife, and I think I mentioned the Firestones couple. And we skied together, and we got along well together, you know, I guess, you know, and they invited me over.
you impressed them.
I don't know if I impressed them, but yeah, we got along well.
Well, that's part of
From a little
networking,
ski-
yeah.
Yeah, little ski
You worked
thing.
for him for 2 summers.
Yeah, I worked for him for a while too. Construction.
Yeah.
He was laying pipes, gas, sewer, pipelines, mainly. Helbig Construction Company. They're not there anymore.
So you were, I mean, just essentially during the winter season, I mean, you're a ski instructor.
I was on skis in the winter
Yep.
and on a bulldozer or on a crane in the summer.
Ah,
Worked out all right.
The chauffeur.
Yeah.
Oh, this is later.
and then I know you did chauffeuring in Austria,
Yeah, I did, yeah.
not a chauffeur. So you're mechanics, basically mechanic guy. You're driving, fixing the car,
Yeah,
working the cranes.
yeah.
And how long were you in Michigan
How
area?
long were we there? 4 years, 4 or 5 years? In
How long were you
Michigan?
in Michigan?
Huh? 3?
4
4.
years, but 3 years.
Well, I thought about 4 years, yeah.
Did you live in Detroit area at all?
Outside of Detroit, Allen Park.
Allen Park, sure.
We lived in Allen Park, yeah. That was close to where I worked then.
Yeah.
So it worked good. Yeah, I had a little place there.
Well, just,
You
Tell
know-
Paul and Linda,
Huh?
tell them about the owners of the house that you stayed in and how burning it was.
Oh, that's up in Matelski.
Yeah,
Oh, my God, yeah.
maybe
Well-
Mom can tell that story. Yeah, Mom will tell that story.
Mom can tell that better.
yeah, there's a midwife story. I read about that. Where, you know, both Bernie and Hans, they never quite got to the hospital.
No, we never made it.
Yeah, that's a teaser for the next one.
These are
So here it
Great.
says, I'm gonna go through a few things here quickly.
Okay.
Sears offers skiing on synthetic snow.
Well, they had a little ramp, outside the store.
Right?
Uh-huh.
In Denver.
And out in Denver, in front of the store, they had a
Oh
little
my
ramp there.
gosh.
Yeah, uh-huh. And
That's
good enough to show them the snowplow turn and to side slip and a few basic maneuvers, And you could do a little bit on it, People liked it, had a good time, and liked it. And I got some good news about it.
I can see
For
that,
them,
yeah.
For them, yeah, uh-huh.
And I'm really fascinated with the Eagle Ridge, because it was just, I remember only the tail end of it, but there's some quite the articles here.
Well, yeah, we had a lot to do with the newspaper up in Buffalo, Buffalo Evening News.
Right.
Uh-huh.
advertising.
That's probably where most of the news came from, I would imagine. I don't know for sure. Anyhow.
I got, your wife is still, but she's really a babe.
Yeah.
I'm looking at these pictures here. I mean, really,
Yeah.
I'm thinking
My
15,
girl.
I'm thinking 15 years younger. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Thank you.
My girl, yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Uh-huh.
Well, what's the question I should be asking while we have him on video here that we haven't asked you?
I think one of the things was of my husband that he was so versatile. He had so many things which he wanted to do, and our son Hans had once had the smarts and all the ideas, but never enough money to make him really go, which is true. But I think what I need to say is that he just was a wonderful father, always positive.
Yeah,
Hans, in Hans's mind, all our life, there was never the glass half empty, it's always half full. I'll give you an example. 2 days ago, we went for a little ride and it was raining like mad, and I said, my God, this is a horrible day. He says, no, darling, it's a beautiful day. Look how everything is lush and green. So just one thing, he's just always been positive. Has always had a positive attitude towards life, towards people, towards everything.
What should he be asking now?
What you should be asking them,
No, what should he be asking Dad that he hasn't asked already?
Dad,
Yeah.
well,
you're gonna be interviewed in a second here, buddy.
Yeah, you're next.
So,
maybe
you're
you
next.
should ask him what was the biggest blessing in his life.
What's the biggest blessing in your life?
Sitting there.
That's a setup.
That is,
Sitting
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. I'm
No,
gonna,
but it's family.
yeah.
Absolutely. We have our faith and we are grateful for that, So there is a interview that I heard on television not too long ago. And I don't know where it actually came from, but it sort of caught me. And the theme was the words, and then. Well, you can take that a long way.
That's right,
A long way. And then,
yeah.
So that's where we are.
Well,
And then, yeah, no. We're very blessed. We live in a wonderful little town in Bemus Point. People should come and visit. It's beautiful in the summertime, beautiful lake, nice sailing, nice motorboating, especially good fishing. Also muskie fishing. Oh yeah, walleye, muskie. It's a great place for vacationing.
I'm gonna put you on the Chamber of Commerce.
That's next.
That's next, and then that's next.
And then?
Yes.
Yeah, well.
Well, this has been great. Thanks, Hans.
I want to thank you for having us here.
Well, that's
Thank you.
great.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it, I must say.
Well, now I'm gonna bring up your biggest blessing, your wife.
Yes, all righty, that sounds good. Come on, darling.